Welcome to Stark Reality. I'm your host, Keith Hanson. This week, we're going to spend all of our time talking with Josh Moore, a former New Hampshire state representative and the founder of the Patriot Initiative. Come on, let's go have some fun. Welcome back to Stark Reality. I'm your host, Keith Hanson. As I said, this week, we're going to spend the entire duration of the program talking with a former New Hampshire state representative, Republican Josh Moore, about a new initiative that he has called the Patriot Initiative. And earlier, I interviewed him on my radio show and invited him to come on the television program because I think this is an initiative that you're really going to appreciate. Josh, thanks so much for being a part of Stark Reality this week.
Thank you, Keith.
29 years old, already you've got 2 terms as a New Hampshire state representative under your belt. You decided not to run for re-election this past election cycle. Tell me why.
Yeah, well, it really all started 2 years ago at the end of my first term, and I started in 2014. I ran and I got out, did my time, as we said, this year, and I didn't run for re-election here in 2018 for the 1920 term. So it started 2 years ago, though, when I was kind of sitting in committee and I'm thinking about all the cultural discussions that we're should be having in the committee meetings. And you have these issues that come up. I sat on the House Education for 4 years, the entirety of my 2 terms. And as I'm sitting there and I'm listening to what's being bantered back and forth in conversation, I thought to myself, we don't even have the foundational principles in line anymore. How can we even have this discussion if we don't have the foundation to begin with? You know, this discussion is futile. We're talking about funding for this or that, and we don't even have the structure in place for it. You know, so it kind of sparked some interest in me. I thought, how do we begin to reinstitute and restore culture and government and begin to reinstitute a constitutional government where men and women are serving who believe in the founding principles of our nation. Not only our nation, but our state as well, because we have a rich history here in America of liberty and justice that is espoused in the Declaration of Independence and is shown in the Constitution. So that's how it really came about. I was inspired to found the Patriot Initiative this year, and we're going strong. We got a lot of people on board, so it's a lot of fun. We're very, very excited.
Good. So tell me more about the initiative. What is it that you hope to bring about? Is it the merging of founding constitutional principles with morality in young people today, or is give me a good overview?
Yeah, that's a very brief overview. It's very good. So our vision and mission is to restore culture and government. So through forums, through public discussions on cultural topics such as racism, sexism, Second Amendment, family breakdown, the LGBT agenda, climate change, you name it. If it's a cultural discussion that we're having a struggle with here in America and in our state, New Hampshire, we want to cover it. And we're going to bring in national names, state names, people who have an expertise and essentially clout, and they have experience in that area. We want to have them come in and talk and engage with the public through these forums. So we're going to be doing this over the course of, however long we're around, and which I believe will be a very long time because this is a big, big battle we have ahead. So we're going to be holding these cultural discussions. Out of these cultural discussion in the forums, we hope to inspire young people and older alike as well, those who are more established, inspire them to get involved in public leadership, in politics, and in government. Those who espouse and believe in the founding values of America, so we don't have this problem where we have people who run for public office on one platform and they vote a different way. The squishy, unprincipled people who get in public office is just a real problem. You know, serving for 4 years, I saw it, and it was very annoying and troublesome at times. I thought to myself, oh my gosh, we're a block of 100 votes and we can't get this passed because the other, 286 people, with minus 14 who are absent for that day, are voting the opposite direction, and a huge chunk of them were my own party members.
All right, so I think we can both agree that the foundation of any good discussion and debate is making sure that we're on the same common language. We're using the same language. So let me ask you this. I'm going to throw a question at you that I've asked many, many incumbents and also candidates for public office, both here in New Hampshire and in Vermont. You say that you're a conservative.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, what does it mean to be a conservative, and do not use the phrases limited government or fiscal responsibility, because those are the cookie cutter phrases.
Oh, they sure are.
So what does it mean to you?
Yeah, conservative really means espousing the founding values of this nation. What made America great? What are we founded on? That would be the Declaration of Independence, the breakup letter from Great Britain, and our blueprint, the guiding document called the Constitution for our nation. That's what it means to me. And morally, that's included when you're talking about family values, preservation of what we have today, right? The family breakdown is a big, big problem. I mean, every single problem that stems that we have today stems from family values. It stems from the structure of the family and what each individual by mom and dad are taught as they grow up. That's where we're at today. So that's what conservative means to me, and I totally agree with you. You actually nailed a really good point there, which is the definition of words have been completely redefined, and you've got these cookie cutter words that we use in these definitions, right? Where, oh yeah, that's what it means to me. I'm local government. I believe in that, local control. I believe in fiscal responsibility, and I'm like, yeah, well, everybody else says that. You're right. So
and words certainly do have meaning.
They do. They do.
All right. Much more with Josh Moore from the Patriot Initiative. Check out the website, by the way, thepatriotinitiativeusa.org. That's thepatriotinitiativeusa.org. Much more with Josh Moore on Stark Reality. I'm Keith Hanson. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Stark Reality. I'm Keith Hanson. Joining me this week, Josh Moore, former New Hampshire State Representative, Republican, conservative, and founder of the Patriot Initiative. Josh, thanks again for being a part of the show this week.
Thank you, Keith.
All right. So, in a nutshell, what are you hoping to bring about? What kind of changes do you want to bring about? We know how you want to do it, but what are the changes specifically? And where do the young people fit in? The high school kids, the college-age kids, and even the young adults in their 20s?
Yeah, first and foremost, what we hope to do is inspire them to begin to run for public office, get involved in public leadership. When I'm talking to the older crowd, man, it's so funny because they're really interested in seeing young people get involved, but they want to see them get involved in the right way too. And there's obviously those out there on the different party lines who want to see them get involved. And if a young person gets involved and they don't believe that way, their way, get out of my way. That's kind of the.
There's no question about it, though. That when you look at the Democrats, when you look at the progressive movement, certainly they have captured the attention of the youth.
Oh yeah, through emotion and everything. I mean, young people, especially my peers today, have been taught to gimme, right? And we're also we're immediate satisfaction, and we love a brand. So you mix all that, and there's all kinds of emotion involved. We tend to gravitate right toward what the immediate thing is in front of us. So what we hope to do, especially over the next 2 years, in first year here, is inspire and train up young people to get involved in public leadership. So if they want to become, and I use the word activist because it's a good word, so it has a definition to it. You're being active in what you're doing, especially in politics. We want to get them involved so they can begin to articulate their values and the values that are taught through the Patriot Initiative. When our core values, when we're talking about the Constitution and the family breakdown, we're talking about the founding values of America, that they can go in public leadership, including public office that they'd be running for, and espouse those values, be able to articulate what they're talking about. If it's the Constitution or if it's a cultural issue, relate that, and then go into committee if they're elected to office and begin to use that information to make better policy in the State House. So that's what we're looking for. So by the end of 2019, we hope to have at least a dozen committed people to run for public office across the state, and we hope to at least double that by 2020, so we could have 30 plus people running.
Do you think that the progressive Democratic youth engagement is predicated largely on the promise of free stuff?
I think so, and I think the promise of free stuff is largely predicated on the fact that we haven't taught personal responsibility in the first place. I mean,
So how do you break that? How do you say to somebody, you know what, everything that these Democrats, these progressives, these liberals, if you want to call them that, it sounds great, but there's a hook to that. There's a catch to that. I mean, think about the free cheese and the mousetrap. Yeah, the cheese may be free, but you're paying the ultimate price. So how do we convey that message to young people today that there really is no such thing as a free lunch, and that they're essentially being used by unscrupulous and shady politicians to achieve their goals?
That's a very good question. One thing you first have to do is there's a lot of emotion in this conversation with a lot of people. You know, it's gimme, 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 that's free stuff, I'm entitled to it. The entitlement part is the really tough part to break down. And I think when we're engaging in this conversation, we have to realize one thing as we're moving forward. Young people have been taught that this is my right. You take healthcare, for instance. It's my right to have healthcare because I have to live, right? I have a right to live. So when we're looking at that, then their next statement or their next belief is, if I have a right to this, then I have a right to somebody's labor, which means they have to provide that for me. Mm-hmm. And in order to get health care as well, if I have to pay for it right now until I get universal health care, if I have to pay for it, I need a job. So I have a right to the job, which means I have a right to a certain wage. Right. You know, so
in essence, it boils down to the Marxist principle of from each according to his ability, to each according to their specific need. You have a right to life, and so somebody else has to provide you the products. Yep. From the fruits of their labor. The doctors have to provide you the fruits of their labors. So you're taking away necessarily from somebody else, not necessarily compensating them for that, and then saying, well, but this is your entitlement.
Yeah, that's exactly.
A slippery slope.
And you know, this goes right back, and what we're going to do in the Patriot Initiative, and through some of the forums we're going to be discussing and things like that, we're going to go right back, and I always explain to people, I said, what is the Declaration of Independence state? We have unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Nowhere in there do you find health care or safety or any of those other things, right? Those are actually privileges we get out of a blessed nation based on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Well, we know what we need to do, so coming up next on Stark Reality with Keith Hanson, my guest, Josh Moore, we're going to talk about what's coming up and how you can get involved. The Patriot Initiative, USA.org is the website. Go and check it out. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Stark Reality. I'm your host, Keith Hanson. My guest this week, Josh Moore, former New Hampshire State Representative and founder of the Patriot Initiative. Josh, again, thank you for being on the show this week.
Thanks, Keith.
So we've talked about the what and the why. Let's talk about now the how and the when. Sure. What's coming up?
Yeah, so what we've got coming up here in the next year, as we're still in sort of a development process, we're scheduling forums, we're scheduling events, we're going to be putting on trainings next year. We hope to have maybe a couple big seminars around the state where we can invite people in and talk about what we are doing. But starting in January, February time frame, as we're in the month of December right now, and it's totally understandable, there's a lot going on. You got the holidays and everything, which is great, family time for people to hang around. But once we're past the holidays and really kicking off the political season, if you will, for the presidential primary in 2020, we're going to be putting on forums. So what I would do is I'd visit the website, visit our events page as we begin to update that, you know, and we're going to be putting on the forums. We're going to be letting people know what's going on, how you can get involved. We're going to have some training sessions coming up on how to equip yourself with the intellectual knowledge, and there's a lot of things that we don't have enough time to go into it right now, but things you're going to learn in the training that you're not going to learn anywhere else with any other organization. So we're really excited about that. You know, like I said, go on the Patriot Initiative, USA.org, and go there. Again, the events page is going to be wonderful. There's going to be a lot of things going on there. The other thing, too, I would encourage people to do, like any organization, we have financial responsibilities we have to meet. Mm-hmm. We're going to have staff and everything, so we're looking for that, obviously. But keep in mind that we want to give people hope. We want people to understand that we can shift culture in government. We can restore what we lost, mm-hmm. right? And we can preserve and conserve what we have. So we're all about doing that. We hope to expand outward into other states once resources allow, but we are right here focused in New Hampshire for right now, and we look forward to making a huge, impactful difference with all the young people we have on our team right now.
And I think it's super important, especially with this election cycle coming up. Of course, the presidential race, very, very important, but more importantly, in 2020, the census.
Yeah.
And then who controls the House, who controls the Senate, who controls the governor's office, who controls the executive council. All of those influences are going to play a part in the redistricting effort.
Yes.
And the one thing that, you know, I hate to sound like the sky is falling when I talk to people, but the one thing that I have to say is if the Democrats control the redistricting process after the 2020 census, you're going to see New Hampshire. Basically, the easiest way to put it is, if you want to know what New Hampshire is going to look like in 10 years, look at what Vermont looks like today. Following the census in 2010 and their redistricting in 2012, You had 6 years of Democratic trifectas, and since that redistricting, not 1 year have Republicans controlled either the House or the Senate.
Yep.
And now you've got the bifurcation of the Democratic Party over there, where now you have Democrats, but now you have, as a legitimate political party, Venezuelan-style Democratic socialists, a la Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who are now, they caucus with the Democrats, but they are espousing radical Marxist, socialist values, and they're bringing that to the State House.
Sure.
And that's what New Hampshire will look like if we allow Democrats to control the redistricting efforts after the 2020 census.
That's exactly right. And if people are looking to really get involved, go to our website and sign up to volunteer. There's a Get Involved section where you can get involved as an activist, or you can get involved to run for state rep or public office. We'd love to connect and get the people involved that way.
If you love your country, help to save your country. ThePatriotInitiativeUSA.org is the website. Check them out, and if it's something that interests you, or if you want to help out, either by volunteering or with a monetary donation, I know they would certainly appreciate that as well. You are watching Stark Reality. I'm your host, Keith Hanson. Much more with Josh Moore right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to Stark Reality. I'm Keith Hanson. I'm joined by Josh Moore. Josh, we've just got a couple more minutes left here, but one of the questions that I do have is, where do you think this country went wrong? What was the turning point where we really started to see things go downhill?
Yeah, just real quick, I think it's really hard to put a date down on that because a lot of things have happened over the course of American history. What I will say is, probably in the turn of the century, in the 1900s, is when things really went awry. In the 1930s, you had the removal of the Bible from the school, because Bible was actually taught in the public school system. There was no really such thing as public school system. It was just school, right? And it was actually held in the churches. So I really think that's when it went awry. And then you had 1947 Everson's versus Board of Education, which was the decision to use Thomas Jefferson's letter on separation of church and state out of context. So a lot of that happened. Things really began to unravel under FDR. But how did it get to begin unravel under FDR? Well, you got to go back further than that. So there's really hard to put a date on it. But I would say really the turn into the 19th century was, or the 1900s, I should say, was the really the turning point, unfortunately. So we have to get back to that. We've got to get to those founding principles and those founding values and talk about, what did the founders say? Mm-hmm. What did those men do? They created a nation that we're having a hard time keeping together and intact. But we can do it. We absolutely can do it. I have hope for my generation.
You know, when I talk to either incumbents or candidates, and I ask them that question, that what does it mean to you to be a conservative? What I'm looking for, and I, our thought process here is very congruent, because I say I'm more of a preservative. I'm looking to preserve the founding principles of this country, and I think ultimately what we need is a group of moral and ethical lawmakers who understand our history.
Yeah.
They understand where we come from. And more importantly, they understand how fragile this experiment in self-government really is. Because that's what it is.
That's exactly right.
And the famous saying, what have you given us, sir? Well, a republic, man, if you can keep it.
That's it.
There have been many, many experiments in socialism. They have all failed. When you look at experiments in self-government, there have been even fewer. And this is very fragile. And it is up to us to keep this. So the need to preserve what we have, to know what our history is, to know what the intentions of our founders were when they established this constitutional republic, and how fragile it is, and what we need to do, what our responsibility is as patriotic Americans to preserve and to protect this experiment in self-government is critical. And I absolutely believe that the children need to be brought up right. They need to be given critical thinking skills.
They do.
I don't advocate for conservative indoctrination, just as I wouldn't advocate for progressive indoctrination.
That's correct.
But what we need to do is give children the foundational education, and then give them the skills to be able to compare and contrast and make their own decisions.
Teach them how to critically think.
Exactly. But without the critical thinking skills, and coupled with the indoctrination, they don't recognize that there are other options out there. They just recognize as this viewpoint is correct and any other contrasting viewpoint is wrong. And they can't compare and contrast the two. I want to thank you for developing the Patriot Initiative. I think it's a great, your goals are great. I think what you're looking to do is very admirable. And I think it can be done. And this country is absolutely worth saving. Again, I would recommend you check out thepatriotinitiativeusa.org. That's thepatriotinitiativeusa.org. Josh's contact information is on that website. As always, let me know what you think about this show. khanson@ycnnow.com is my email address. Again, khanson@ycnnow.com. Coming up next week, of course, we'll bring the mailbag back. Plus, we'll focus on our more progressive lawmakers and their Twitter activities. And as always, follow me on Twitter, speaking of which, @RealKeithHanson. That's @RealKeithHanson on Twitter. As always, thank you for tuning in to Stark Reality. I am your host, Keith Hanson. God bless you, and talk to you next week.